Welcome, everyone. It's Kendrick, and I'm so excited to be with you all today and be on this journey with you. I know I've had a crazy day. I don't know if you've had a crazy day. I really appreciate you taking time out to be here and create some space for yourself in the journey. So I'm joining you today, not as an expert in this, but as a co-journeyer on, how do I create more ease and flow and presence and joy in my life? And some days I am totally down the track of all my value is around how much I do and I haven't done enough and all that. And then other days I can be in some flow. Doing this presentation today, I had really intense meetings. And so it was good, like, oh, Karen, you need to do something in between to kind of shift your body and shift your brain. So y'all helped me today. So thank you. And really, my hope for the conversation today is that you don't come away with more things to do that are spinning in your head, because all that does is add to all the things you're doing and cause more stress, but that you come away with feeling like you've had a little space. You come away with some tools, which we'll have tools and all kinds of ideas, and that we'll learn from each other, because I know you all are my co-journeyers on this path. And I really want to hear what you're thinking about and working with. And so much of this is not about what we're doing, because we could work out and eat right and sleep 8 hours and do all these things that help us with energy or focus. But if we're doing that out of self-loathing or blaming ourselves or never doing it enough, that's just adding to, obviously, our stress. And so my hope is that we can come with a lot of self-compassion and the L word, a lot of love for ourselves, that we can bring more of who we are and more of why we're here in the world to the world into our own experiences. So let's begin our journey today. So I have been in the nonprofit sector my whole career, program side, ED, MGO, DOD, in the social services and university sector. And then I have a lot of interest in education counseling, and I have coaching certifications in leadership coaching, and really understanding how we embody, how we want to show up and have presence as leaders. So I love talking about all this, and I'm excited to be with you all. So starting out, we have our work-life balance. Is it even real? So before we dive into, is it even real, or what is our work-life balance? I have my best supporter in the world, my colleague, Rebecca, here on here to support me and give me balance today. She's a great balance for me at work, to run some polls just for us to get some ideas on where you all are and what you're thinking at this time. So as Rebecca brings those up, I just want to remind you that you'll be receiving a recording of this once we're completed, and be popping your questions into the chat box, into the question box. That's even easier for Rebecca, that Q&A box. Then she can track what questions you have throughout the short presentation. It's going to be really interactive and back and forth. All right, Rebecca, how do we do the polls?
Sorry, I am working on setting that up right now. I'm going to pop one into the chat while I just troubleshoot that a little bit.
Okay, great. Sounds great. So we're going to pop one in the chat box. Go ahead and open that up and take a look. And Rebecca, I can't see the chat box now that I'm presenting in full screen, so just FYI.
No worries, it'll be there in just a minute. Thank you all for your patience.
Everybody, this is a moment to breathe. A great breathing technique is you breathe up and you breathe down and do a longer out breath, and you think of something that makes you smile, and it actually brings in oxytocin and lowers your stress hormone. So it's let yourself just have a little smile on your face. I always think of my dog and his little happy dance once he's ready for his treat. And that can really help you. So go ahead and answer the chat. Now I can see it, Rebecca. How would you describe your relationship with your job? So go ahead and start answering that in the chat right now. Wow, I see all kinds of things coming through. Healthy, strained, healthy, a lot of healthy, great, love my job, strained. Yeah, it's so interesting. Life is cycles, right? I don't think any of us have ever been in every job in every moment in our life when everything is actually mostly healthy and wonderful. And so if you're in a healthy, wonderful space, celebrate it, enjoy it, love it, lean into it. And if you're in a strained place or tough place, nothing wrong with you. This is all, I think it's opportunities and journey of learning. Is this the right place for me? How do I make this work? How do I step into this differently? And then figure out, is it the right space for me to remain? And all that journey is part of our growing as humans too. So wherever place you're in, it has value. And sometimes when it's really good, we get a little nervous. And so leaning into that space when it's healthy and it's good and it's exciting, and celebrating and allowing yourself to enjoy has so much value. All right. You want me to just keep going with the chat conversation, Rebecca, or you want to keep trying the polls?
I think we're going to do the chat conversation. The polls are not firing up for some reason, but I can put the next question into the chat for everyone to respond to.
Okay. Why don't you skip to the third one? What does being balanced look like to you? I'd love to hear what people say. What does being balanced with work look like to you? Go ahead and answer that one. I see some folks here always feeling behind, like you're not getting enough done. There's the political stress of where you work. Some of you in the right place. That's beautiful. Strained and crushing. Yeah. Thank you all. Honestly, all of them. I love it. All of them. Okay. What does balance look like? Not bringing work home. No pressure to work in during off hours. Time for self-care. Team members who step in. Not feeling burned out. Getting help from leadership. I love it. Right. My house not in a state of chaos. Amen. Time to take time with family for travel. A lot of you are saying all of them. Turning my brain off. Yes. Good. I love that. I love that. Not bringing work home. Okay. So we're all in a space, an interesting space in this time in our society, right? We have all this technology to help us, but then all of it is hitting us all at once, right? It's all happening at once. And there's a lot of pressure to produce so much with the same amount of time we've always had as humans in a day. So I love all these comments. Thank you all for responding. This is great. Time for self-care. All right, so let's jump in and have some of this conversation, and then we'll come back to the next poll, Rebecca. So why do we need to think separately about work and life? And we'll keep talking about, is there a work-life balance? I met the other day with a friend, and she said, I'm removing the word work from my vocabulary. And she's in the middle of building a whole business and building a whole training arm of her business, working tons of hours. And she said, I want to think about it as tasks I'm doing throughout a day or a week. So I have, I have to, for you all as fundraisers, okay, I have some donor planning to do. I have some donor phone calls. I need to do this piece around this event. I need to talk to a colleague about a collaboration. And you can think about how, and then there's work at home. There's got some house cleaning to do, got to go to the grocery store. Kids got to get to this thing. I want to watch my favorite Netflix series, and I'm going to go take my Zumba class. So you've got all these different things you're wanting to do in a day, and be thinking about, it's interesting to think about them as, how do I organize them in a way that I do the things that are tougher for me at the right time of day. So maybe some of those donor calls are tough. So in the morning when I'm fresh, I want to do those calls. Maybe I'm a morning person, so some of that home stuff could be done in the morning. Be thinking about the rhythm of your life versus work is draining and life is fun. And I think even just having that mentality that I can have fun, or things can work better for me, or I can get a breath once I leave the office. And then we're hit with all the responsibilities at home, where it's more like throughout the day, how do I create a rhythm and breath and moments and breaks to recharge, to refill? And they don't take long. After Rebecca and I just got out of a really great, exciting meeting. I'm so hyped, but there's so much to think about. I just went down and just did like 5 minutes of some lunges in my living room, just to kind of let my body move and get some energy out. And so how do we start thinking? It's interesting. I've never done this. Start thinking about our lives, not as work is draining and life is fun, but as a series of events. And some of them are exciting and fun. Some of them are more difficult. And how do we play with that? So it's just an interesting thing to think about. So it's about movement, not balance. And I think this concept that I'm somehow going to do enough life and enough work where it comes to this equilibrium and I feel peace. What do y'all want to feel? This work-life balance, like we're supposed to receive what if we have this balance? Put some things in the chat box. What are we supposed to experience if we somehow manage to succeed in this work-life balance? I'd love to see what you all say. And it's kind of an interesting concept, and I think it's an illusion. It's because there's a moving target, and it's not so much a balance between work and life, but really thinking about how do we create this pendulum of movement in between all the activities of our lives in a way that works for us, right? If we are Zen, I love it, peace, easygoing, not chronically clenching my jaw, love it, joy, peace, satisfying. Yeah. So, and we're all different, right? Like I'm an ambivert, I'm in the middle. So I need a combination of fun people activities. And then I need quiet time at home. I have a friend that's extreme introvert. She needs a lot of her pendulum swinging in a really quiet space alone. So we all have these different parts of our lives that include work, home, family, friends, community. And we want to be moving between them in a way that works, the rhythm that works for us. And if we're stuck in one area, where we're not allowing any movement in the others, that's when we start to really feel frustrated and burned out, and we're not able to refill our buckets. So we'll talk a little bit about this, but and think about, we have a set amount of time every day, but time is malleable sometimes if you're doing things you love, right? And it's fun how you have so much more time when you're enjoying yourself. But really it's about my energy. How do I manage my energy? Because if my goal is to get more done in the same amount of time, and that's my only value, and that's what means I've arrived, and that's what means is going to make me feel better and feel peaceful, we're never going to get there. It's an illusion. And I think having that balance between work and life, work is life. We're spending a lot of time at work. It is an illusion. So let's play with that idea of, I have parts of me I want to not only be able to engage with, but also grow and then refill as we go along the way. Okay, I love these comments. Continually motivated, enjoying what I'm doing. Awesome. Able to provide and value in both my home and my paid occupation. Love those comments. Okay, so what must happen first is an opportunity to think about, it is really my life. And am I waiting for something? I know I have done this many times. It's like you're a kid, you're waiting to be in the next grade, you're waiting to be out of high school, you're waiting to get through college, you're waiting for the next job, you're waiting for the thing. So is there any way in which you're waiting for someone else to do it for you, to fix it for you, to make it better for you? So that's a great question to ask yourself. And where am I not just taking responsibility for my own life and thinking about, how do I do this in a way that's has self-compassion and kindness toward myself? And then believing that you deserve and are worthy of creating that life experience. If all my value is wrapped up in doing, I know I grew up in a doing family, so I get that. And that's where I have to spend all my energy and time. I'm not really thinking I'm deserving or worthy of a more wonderful flow in my life or a more balance for myself, right? I have to remain stuck over here to get my value. And so be thinking about, where am I getting my value? And do I like saying I'm really busy and I'm overworked and I'm stressed? And is that feeding my need for self-worth? Or is that something I really want to stop saying? Maybe I want to say my life is full and exciting versus I'm really overwhelmed and doing too much, and start shifting some of those mindsets. So let's play with that. And here's a great tool I'm going to give you next. Whether you're going into a meeting, whether you're getting ready to call a donor, whether you're processing something that you're working with. Obviously, you all were kind enough to make time in your day to be here. So let's take an opportunity just for a minute to process what's happening for you about this concept of work-life balance. So these are 4 great questions, and I'll just show you how they work. This came through one of my coaching programs. And our body basically holds information for us. Our emotions hold information. Our breath holds information. And if we tune in and listen, we can really hear a lot. It's like, how do I tune into that intuition? How do I tune into what's working and not working for me? So our body's like just full of information. And if we're not listening, it gets louder and louder. That's why you get the clenched shoulder or the clenched jaw that just, you can't go away, or you start feeling sick all the time, or whatever it is. Your body's like, hey, I tried to tell you quietly, I'm telling you louder and louder. So how do we tune in and listen more readily, right? So let's think about, you all just jot these things down wherever you are. Think about your whole piece around balance and rhythm and flow in your life. And ask yourself, where am I in my body? So if I think about mine, I sort of notice I'm in my chest up here. I feel a little, and what are the sensations? It feels a little tight, a little like I can't breathe deeply. My breath is shallow. What am I feeling? It's a combination of excitement, because I have a lot of really exciting things happening in my work and my life these days, but also some fear, like, can I handle it all? It's really overwhelming. What am I going to mess up? It's all being so great. You know, what's going to happen? And so what am I thinking? Maybe it's too much, or maybe I can't handle it. So that's like really good information. Like, okay, so all this really cool stuff's happening. You're feeling some anxiety and you're feeling some fear. So what do you need, Karen? What do you need? So what are some strategies you can then help yourself move forward? So I can call Rebecca and be like, oh my gosh, Julie, what's happening? I can talk to somebody. I can figure out how to organize the work I need to do in a way that kind of helps me feel better. I can do one thing at a time. I can go for a walk and shift my thinking. So then I have choices. And so the more information I can tune into, then I can have some choices in how I shift out of wherever I am and what might be happening. So this is a great tool also. Let's say you're getting ready to make some donor calls, and that's maybe not something you always look forward to. I know all of us have those awful days. You're like, I don't want to do this. And maybe on those days you shouldn't do them, but also you can check into what's going on. So what's going on in my body? Like my stomach feels tight. I'm feeling really rumbly and anxious, and I'm feeling like I'm not going to do a good job. I'm going to make a mistake. Someone's going to get upset, be mad at me. And I'm thinking that they don't want to hear from me, right? So if I get on a phone call with a donor and that's what I'm thinking, then my energy, my tone, my language, my body is going to be saying all that, right? So then I have an opportunity like, okay, Karen, normal to think and feel all those things. What's really true? What's really true is I'm the connection for donors. I care about them. They care about our mission. They want to make a difference. I'm not going to catch everybody home. That it's not going to be good timing for everybody, but I will have some of those great conversations. And so let me just jump in and create some space and opportunity for that. Then you're going to shift your whole system for those conversations. Okay, Rebecca.
So,
yeah,
Gary has a question about what's the best way to shift from a disappointing situation to a positive learning curve.
I think first you got to give yourself a moment to feel the feelings. I think sometimes we think we have to leap all of a sudden into positive thinking or whatever it might be. Sometimes you just need some time to process, to journal, to talk to a friend, to talk about your frustrations, disappointment, the parts that you felt like you messed up in, and allow some space for that. Because emotions are just information. They're not bad. They're not bad emotions and good emotions. I mean, anger is great as a tool that maybe you need to set boundaries. Fear is like, oh, there's some things I need to pay attention to. Maybe it's unfounded, maybe it is. And so they're just a great tool to tune into and listen to. And then if you've given yourself a little bit of space, I mean, if you need to shift immediately to a new meeting or be in a new space, moving your body, doing some meditation or breath work, watching a silly video, calling someone that you like that's funny, something to kind of shift you. Humor is so powerful. Learning to laugh and have humor about the challenges of life is an incredible way to shift your energy and others. That's what my family does. My kids do it. And I love it because we can talk about some tough things and we're cracking jokes. Not that we're not taking it seriously, but it's kind of a way of saying, this is not going to conquer me. And I can talk about how hard it is. Some days I can cry and be really falling apart, and other times I can have a sense of humor. So anything else, Rebecca?
Well, there's a great conversation going on in the chat just about bosses and how we interact with them. A few people have shared just their experiences with bosses, either maybe crossing a line in terms of how they are suggesting self-care to their employees, but then also bad cultures that make it feel impossible almost to have a good balance or to be able to ask for the things that you need. One person mentioned a boss that would reprimand them for leaving before her at the end of the day. And then there have been some other comments. So I don't know if you want to maybe speak to or share a little bit about when you're in that situation, you have leadership that's really resisting or maybe like actively working against your efforts to be in a better place. How do you handle that?
Wow, great question. I think first of all, we need to, number one, take responsibility for ourselves. So if we're just waiting for the leader to make it all better, I've done that before. Let me just hint to them that this is too much, and then they'll somehow fix it for me. Well, they don't know what's going on. They're busy, that they're overwhelmed. So sometimes leaders just, they're not tuned in. They don't know how to fix it, and they don't really realize it's that big of an issue. So first thing to do, I think, is to get really clear. Let's say your job description is XYZ, but you're doing all this other stuff. It's too much. You're not able to do anything well. Sitting down and really clarifying what that looks like to your boss. So I'd love to meet with you, talk a little bit about all my areas of responsibility. I'm really wanting to do well with my donors and raise these funds. And I want to just talk about how you want me to reprioritize, because a lot of things have stepped into what I'm doing, and start looking and set it up where they can see like how much time it's taking a week, and then have a discussion from a space of information that they can, whoever your boss is, know their personality type. Do they need data? Do they need a story? Like what works for them? And it may take more than one time, right? They're just not going to automatically go, oh, okay, well, let's do all this stuff differently. So be in a process of communicating up and managing up, number one. If you have someone that's just an awful person and they're not kind and don't have compassion and don't really care, that's a really different thing. And I think the question for you will be, how much longer can I sustain and do this in a way that keeps me whole? And is this the right space for me? But many times what we interpret as not caring, they just don't know and understand fully. We may have said some things and we think they do, but sitting down and being like, hey, what do you understand that I'm doing these days? Well, let me show you. And let's talk about maybe how to refigure some of that. And here are some ways I would like to set things up so that I'm really present to donors. I want to, have some moments to go for a walk or take a break or whatever that might be. All right, what else?
Kind of a little bit related to that, but I think it maybe deserves a little bit more time and discussion is, and I know we talk about this a lot at Veritus, is the idea of the expectations that you put on your gift officers for certain things, like a certain amount of activity or, being able to do this. And I know all of us are probably very aware of how much of an issue the turnover is right now across the industry. And those expectations coming down can feel a lot of pressure when you don't have, you really can't, maybe you're not in a position to push back on that. So maybe talking a little bit more about that.
Yeah, you've got bosses that feel the pressure, feeling like revenue's lowering. Now they're pushing you to go after the money, or they're using metrics that are transactional, like how many meetings and how many proposals and how many things, without really looking at, how are we having meaningful connections? Rebecca, maybe you can put the meaningful connections, some information about that in the chat box too, as a resource. Yep. Yeah, at Veritus, it's so easy to get into that. I mean, your bosses are coming from a place of fear and pressure. They've got the big stick over their heads too. And so, there's educating yourself first and seeing what the alternative is and how that works would be a good place to start. I think that's how fundraising has been done for so long. And that's what people know and feel like that's where they're going to go under stress. So starting to educate them that there is a different way that's more relational. Like we look at how many meaningful touch points are we doing a month? Do we have a plan for every single donor? Are we working our plan? And if we're doing that, some donors don't want to meet, but they're going to give significant gifts because we're following up and telling them the difference they made, and we're creating meaningful moments with them. not in face to face, right? Some people it's through text, depends on the donor. So starting to help educate your boss that donors want to communicate in really different ways. Thinking face to face is the only way is not really how things are working these days for donors. And being donor centric in the sense that we're tuning into how they want to communicate, and we're tuning into what they're passionate about and telling them they're making a difference, and collaborating as partners with them is how we're going to really bring in that revenue significantly over time. And that going after the money, we may get some right now, but we will not get the potential of what each donor may be interested in giving if we do that. It's going to be transactional. Now, you may have a boss that says, I don't care, do it anyway. And then once again, you have to make decisions about ethically for you, is that okay? And does that work for you? All right. Let's keep going and keep the questions coming. This is great stuff, you all. So making time to care for yourself. So it's not just about saying no, it's also creating space for what feeds your soul. So if you think about, and it's also sort of a muscle we build. So if it's, I want to have more focus at work, we want to be doing things that help us develop focus. And it's a muscle we're building. It's not like if we just do X, Y, Z, we're all of a sudden going to have amazing focus. It's something we start working at, just like an athlete starts working on building their ability to run. I cannot even run a mile, even though I loved working out. So it would take me a while to develop that and expand that and then utilize that as a tool. So it's saying no to pieces that don't fill you up, but also creating space for what feeds your soul. Because if you just say no to certain things and other things are filling up that time that don't feed your soul, you're really back in the same spot. I think a real important piece for us to take some time to process is how in our society, it's this machine orientation that we are going to show up, work the same amount, produce the same amount, 40 hours a week, 8 to 5, boom. And everything's linear, everything is producing at the same rate. And, we're supposed to be able to do that. And if I'm not producing all day at the same rate with the same level of focus, then something's wrong with me. Well, even that concept is so not real because as we are humans, we're part of this. Think about nature. Nature has cycles: when things rest, when things grow, when things blossom, when things die off. And so we are human, and we function in cycles. We have times of our lives, we have more energy or less. We have times of the day, we have times of the seasons that work better for us. And so starting to understand that I am going to be in a cycle of rhythms of energy and focus. And so times of the day are better for me or not as good for me. I can only focus, it says 90 minutes, but I can't focus for 90 minutes. When I have a difficult task, I say 20, I put on my timer, 20 minutes. I'm going to focus on this difficult. And then usually it's not as hard as I thought it was. That's how I trick myself into doing it. I give my 20-minute task. And so allowing yourself to be a human that's in cycles and allowing yourself to rest, because that is part of that cycle. And that rest is a gift. It restores us, and rest may mean different things to different people, right? It may sometimes just sitting here, I have 5 minutes before the meeting, I look out at the trees, that's rest. Sometimes taking some good time off and not doing any work and really giving your body a shift and a change is rest. I put in the way up at the top of the chat boxes about the Nat ministry. I love their whole sense of rest as a rebellion and as resistance to our society's unbelievably unfair expectations of how we're going to function as employees. And so learning to, and not just rest because then I'll be more productive, but rest because you deserve rest. You deserve rest. You deserve that in the cycle. And then in that space, you can come out with, just like the winter into the spring, into the summer, you can come out with new growth and new creativity and new opportunities. So I like that we have this picture on here, because we always think about self-care as like spa days and baths, but it's really not that at all. I mean, you can do that if you like it. That's great. I like those things, but it's not something like someday when I take a vacation or on the weekend or when I finally get to XYZ, then I'll have self-care or have rest. It's something that we need a part of our everyday in every moment. So what works for me to recharge every 90 minutes, right? How do I go out and stand in the sun for 10 minutes or unplug from technology? I'm always on my phone when I get a break. What else could I do instead of do that really recharges me? And how do I shift into what in my life is working and start thinking about building some gratitude and building some space? And if you're feeling really fried right now, it's not expecting to go from 0 to 100, having grace and having little steps and little pieces that you do that feed your soul, that help you breathe again. I was riding my bike at the park, which is one way I feed my soul. And a guy was sitting on the hill reading. I kept seeing him. We started chatting, and he's dealing with fatigue right now. And so a piece for him is to come out to the park and read, just to get some space in nature. So whatever you're dealing with, what is an action you can take that helps recharge and refill? And also in the resources at the top, there's a piece around how do I bring in, it's all about the energy, not the time. And there's a great assessment you can take to look at how am I doing around how I'm taking care of my body, my soul, my spirit, my mind. And, what are some things I can start implementing into my life? If I'm feeling really resentful and stressed and angry, how do I start with giving myself more sleep every night? What ritual can I have in the evening to help me get to bed earlier? What ritual can I have in the morning so I get a few moments with my kids where we're not rushing? What are those little small things? Maybe 15 minutes. We keep thinking there's some big thing we have to do, some big transformation. And I know we all know those people that are really disciplined and do all these great things. And not all of us are going to be that way. So what little steps can we take that help us build more rest, to build more resilience, to build more presence in our lives? So I think I've talked about a lot of this. I want to ask you all, what are some rituals? Rituals being, like for me in the morning, get up and have my cup of coffee and read something inspirational. Maybe I do a little journaling. I open a book that has questions and just randomly get a question to answer. It helps me be in a more creative space, take a moment. What are some rituals you all do? I don't do it every morning, but when I do, it helps. What are some rituals you all have found help you, particularly even while you're at work, that help shift you maybe out of a negative experience or a tough experience, or help you when you're really tired and just want to take a nap? I took naps on the job before. I had a job, they had me in the basement with no windows, not around anybody. So I did take naps, but we don't all get those opportunities. So what are some things you all can share? Rebecca, you can jump in and help me. What do you all do?
There's some great things coming in the chat: taking mindful breaks, journaling, meditation, stretching, focused breathing, gratitude journal, well-balanced breakfast. Yes, food motivated too.
If I don't
really
eat,
helps.
if I don't eat, I'm a mess. I have to eat every 3 hours something with protein and healthy. I'm a mess. These are great. Push-ups, get my heart going. I love it. I love it. Take my dog for a walk. Yes. And the other day I was noticing when I took my dog for the walk, I was like, okay, let me get my dog for a walk, get this task done. And I'm like, what am I doing? Or listen to a podcast so I can learn something. Why don't I just be on a walk? Like, I'm not going to somehow accomplish more in the day because I'm doing something productive while I'm walking, and not that I love podcasts, but think about it, like take a mental break. Look at the trees, watch your dog being silly, smell the air, listen to the birds. Like even whatever we're doing, being more present in that moment can be helpful. What else, Rebecca?
I think, well, we've got some other things, just doing visioning. A lot of people like the change of environment, taking lunch outside, being in community, not getting caught up in complaining.
Yeah.
Good comments here.
I like the complaining one's good. I mean, sometimes it's just like, you just need to. So a great game to play is like, okay, I get to complain for so many minutes to a friend or to myself in my head, or once I start repeating myself, I have to stop. And, allow yourself to get that out. But if I see myself being like about something, then I better stop and figure out what's really going on. And then where do I have choice and make a different choice, right? Because being in that space will not be good for me or anybody else.
Yeah, my husband and I actually have something that we've started implementing, which I feel like is something that you could implement with a friend, a colleague, where, if something's going on and we see the other one is stressed out, we'll ask a very intentional question of, do you need to just vent or do you want me to help you? And so that kind of opens the door for, if I just need a vent session, we're going to sit tight for a second and we're going to do that. And if I actually want you to help me solve this, then I can let you know and like bring you into a good conversation about it. But it's a good way of opening that space if that's really what the person needs to get it out. But then also checking in about, do they want your advice at that time or not?
I love that, Rebecca. That's fantastic. Yeah. And I love these. And just go back to, this is not a destination. We all arrive and the sun shines and we're perfect and everything's great. I mean, it's just, we're on a journey and we're doing this messy, beautiful, amazing life as humans. It's a crazy ride. And so we're not here that long. So how do we make our ride better? Like, what are we waiting for? Are we waiting for when we're 75 and retired to then have a good life? Like in this moment today, how can we make it something more delicious, more beautiful, more joyful, and maybe just be able to take a breath, right? For some of us, we're in a really tough place. Even just be able to take a breath. These are great ideas, you all. Yeah, and you all, Rebecca's got 2 little ones. Y'all with little ones. I have older ones and 6 grandbabies, so I remember what that's like. It's constantly moving. Yeah, constantly moving. So I would love if you all are willing to play, and then I'm glad to take any more questions. A while back, I met with this amazing artist, Daniel Nevins, and I was just curious about, what is it like being an artist? And I was exploring my life as an artist. I would love to learn how to paint, but it's more about in the work I do, I'm an artist. You all are artists in the work that you do, right? So what does that mean to be an artist? So Daniel says, well, I had this dream. I went from doing small paintings to really big paintings, and I was stuck for 4 months. I could not paint this big painting. I didn't know how to do it. I was so frustrated. And one night I had this dream where my favorite Irish musician came to me in full Irish regalia and said, Daniel, I understand you're having difficulty with the painting. Can I give you some words of advice? And this is what he was told in his dream. Number 1, admit it's hard. Number 2, and we'll talk through these in a minute, stop bullying it. Number 3, ask it what it wants to become. And number 4, be kind to yourself. In turn, you'll be kind to the painting. So Daniel took those back with him, and then this beautiful painting came out of that. And a while back, Rebecca and I remember this, Rebecca, when I'd gotten this from Daniel, we were in a workspace where we were just crispy burnt out, weren't we? Like we had been producing a lot, some things weren't going well. We were just like, it was just every day. We were not our spicy, spunky, fun selves at all.
No.
No, we were not. It was just like, what's the next thing we got to do? And we sat down with these questions and like, okay, what we're going through right now is really hard. And how are we bullying it? Well, we're like trying to wrestle it to the ground and make it work. And we're all about like, oh, how can we make this happen? And the details and like pushing, and it wasn't really working. And we didn't just step back for a minute and say, what would you like to become? And I know that sounds kind of weird, but in a sense, you're giving yourself space from whatever it is you're dealing with. Because like when you can give a friend better advice than yourself, sometimes the thing we're dealing with is so in on us, it's like we can't see anything. So Rebecca and I are like, well, what do you want to become? And how do we be kinder to ourselves? All of a sudden, like how many minutes did it take, Rebecca? I don't know.
I don't know. It was the most productive, like 30-minute meeting I think we had.
All of a sudden, all of that heaviness lifted. And we had energy, we had creative ideas, we had hope. And so I want you to take a few moments right now, and then I would love to hear some things that come up. I want you to think about, what is a challenge you're facing right now that really is heavy and difficult and taking its toll on you physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and answer these questions for a few moments. And talk about what that might mean for you, and stop bullying it. In what ways am I trying to force it or push it or bullying myself? Jot some of those things down. Just take a couple minutes, and then I'd love to hear back from you in the chat box, some things that bubbled up. I see some great ideas in here. What's being heavy for you? So go ahead and play with these questions for a minute, and see what bubbles.
So for some of you who have shared your challenge in the chat, how might you be bullying that situation a little bit? Or kind of just trying to force it?
I think the more we hear what you all are doing, the more we'll realize how we're doing it too. Give us some ideas like, oh yeah, I'm doing that on this situation.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely share a challenge. Right now, I'm packing up my whole house, trying to get ready to move. I'm bullying that a little bit for sure. It is hard. That, and so I think all of these are, really, really good and honest moments. And
love this, trying to anticipate what everyone else wants to see or see it to be, trying to be perfect. Those are great examples of bullying.
Oh, Linda shared a wonderful quote that I'm going to read, that she shared in the Q&A box, but it said, "If I waited till I got my ducks in a row, I'd never cross the street." Sometimes you just have to gather what you got and make a run for it. I love that.
That's your quote for your move, Rebecca.
I know.
Yeah, bullying myself for not getting everything right the first time, even though it's an unrealistic expectation for anybody. Yes. Yeah, not allowing ourselves to make mistakes, to learn, to fall down and get back up, but learn great stuff from it. Yes, I love that. Beautiful. Mm-hmm.
And then we did also, just while people are still processing and thinking about this, have a question just about, how do you kind of mitigate the draining aspect or the difficulty that can come when you maybe have other people in your life, whether like maybe a coworker that's just a negative Nelly, always, kind of bringing the situation down. It adds to the hard of it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, other people. Gosh, there's other humans we have to deal with, aren't there? Dang. Where should we start with that one? Sometimes it's kids, sometimes it's colleagues, sometimes it's a partner. It's interesting how one question I would ask is, how are you taking responsibility for how they're showing up? Are you imagining or believing that you need to do something or be something or make something happen or say something that makes them be different than they are? Or are you just embracing, this is who they are, where they are? Because you really don't have control over changing them. Maybe with a young kid, you have maybe you have some control. I don't know. I raise kids. Some days you really, really wonder how much you have. But I think that'd be the first thing, is how am I bullying it? How am I trying to control this? So if it's a really negative, colleague, let's say, is there something about this that I'm thinking I have to change or convince them it's different? And I'm using up my energy to then try to change them, right? Which you don't have any control over doing. So once you're clear about that, like, what does this attach in me? Like, where are my hooks for this situation? Did I grow up with a negative parent? Did I, am I negative myself more than I realized? Like, what is the hook? Because if someone is a certain way and I don't have any hooks around it emotionally from my past or my life experience, it doesn't impact me as much. So maybe maybe they're there. There's always those people that are like, every coaching certification training I went to, there's always that one person that, like, dang, they get on my last nerve. And they were always my best teacher. So what is it I can learn from this person? What are the opportunities there for me to shift to a different place? And then how do I not take responsibility for how they're showing up? And how do I use breath and movement and things for myself to, you know, like, shift out of whatever energy they're in? Because it can be tough to be around that kind of negativity. It's a great question.
I've got some great thoughts just on kind of that bullying it, that I'm trying to take all this responsibility, take that control.
Mm.
Maybe trying to force yourself to move on or feel better or, move past a certain emotion state if, you're still healing from something.
Mm-hmm. I should be in a different place by now. Wow, that's
Yeah.
just makes it harder. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting to the piece around when I start realizing I'm bullying, like I'm trying to take all responsibility, I'm trying to do high control, I'm trying to be perfect. I'm under the belief that it's all up to me. If I shift that to be like, this thing in the world wants to make itself happen, and I'm just here as a tool. And what does it want? Let's see, how do I need to show up? What's helpful? It's kind of crazy, but it's a really interesting shift. Daniel talked about how he also what helped him. He was at an art show of his, and the woman wanted to see some of his paintings upstairs. And he's like, oh, let's not go down there because that one's not very good. And she said to him, Daniel, they're listening. And he was like, in the sense of, like, thinking about whatever you're heavy around, it's listening, it's paying attention to how you're showing up, it's wanting to create something in the world. And if I create that little bit of separation and allow it to breathe, and then I have more space for creativity and excitement and ideas versus a heavy, restricted, I must be perfect and do it and get everybody happy. It can be a really different experience.
Yeah. And then I guess I would be really curious, as everyone's been processing some of this, what are some of those pieces that about how you can be kind to yourself? Now that you've identified this challenge and kind of how you're bullying it, how can you be kind?
I love it. How can you be kind to yourself? So let's go back those 4 questions, like, where am I in my body? What am I thinking, feeling? How's my breath? Set your alarm to tune in to where you are and be noticing your thinking. What is my self-talk? And so one way to be kind is to, like, I'm going to start paying attention to my self-talk. I'm going to start writing it down and really listening to what I'm saying to myself. And is that something I would say to people I love? Hell no, I never say that to my best friend or my colleague or someone I care about. So why would I say it to myself? And what is the belief? Like, there's a belief underneath all that if I, get after myself constantly, I'll somehow do better. And then I'll somehow be happier. I mean, it's like such a false myth. And so one would be really checking the self-talk, and what I'm saying. And, you are where you are in this very moment for a reason. You have a purpose, you have a gift, you have a way of being with others that they need. You have learnings to happen for yourself. And so working on even like the bigger picture belief about your reality can be helpful to yourself. Like, why am I here? And what's my purpose? And what's my value? And if I show up every day and I'm like, I'm going to do my best, like for me, mine is, how do I create space for other people to step into who they are authentically and feel safe to do that? Like that's what I want to do in the world. So no matter what I get accomplished today, if in my work with others, I created a space for them to show up more authentically, that is success. So even how you define success is self-love and self-care to yourself. So figuring out how you're defining it that's not working, it's really mean. And then how you might redefine that to, man, just bring your gifts. Everybody's messing up. Everybody's failing. Everybody's not having a good day. Everybody's not showing up in their best. And, but everybody has their gifts to bring to the world.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. Are there any other questions or thoughts that are coming up for you all just after that exercise, or as we get kind of towards the end of our time together today? There was a question that I thought was interesting. I'd be curious what people in the chat have to say about this as well, is how do you build in moments for thankfulness and compassion in your work? All of us work differently, and so those reminders can kind of come in a variety of forms. I'd be curious to hear how you all are intentional about that.
I love that one. How would you
I know
do it?
for me, I need it. Like,
We always say
I know. Well, and this is gonna, I think, be a great example of the ways that you and I are different, but also very similar. I'm like so task oriented and systematic. I need it like on my calendar or on a task list, which makes it sound like not as fun.
but it is fun for you.
But it is fun for me, and it helps me remember like that intentionality.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I will probably start out putting it on my calendar because this is a great idea, but then I'll forget to do it because I'm not systematic like Rebecca. I love how systematic she is. So yeah, I think it'd be interesting to attach it to certain things that happen naturally. Every time you go to the bathroom, walk through a certain doorway, every time you're done with a meeting. I mean, you could set triggers like that where it's a certain thing that you just take a moment to say, what am I appreciative for that just happened? And it's like building a muscle for that to occur. I have an interesting story about, I did training in leadership embodiment. It's really how to move out of fight and flight and be present to people. And the teacher, she talked about, she has a family relatives that's just like dripping negative person. And that was like, after she'd done like 20 years of practice in this, like this was her test, to go sit with this very drippingly negative person and be in gratitude and unattachment and allow her to be who she is. And she said one day she used breath and these different tools. One day she had one little thought about like, why is she this way? And immediately the woman went from complaining about everybody else to attacking her. So it was really interesting how like we create the energy and the space for what we attract and what's around us, by what we're, and what opportunities are coming our way, by the space we're holding. So even through a tough time, there's things to be have gratitude around. So I love that question. What else do people say they do?
Heather shared that when she goes on walks, she'll go through the alphabet and name something she's grateful for each letter. I love that idea. That's really fun. And then Cindy shared about the Mel Robbins practice of giving yourself a high five in the mirror every day, which can feel silly, but it really works and makes you smile. And I think somebody said at the very beginning, how important laughter is and how that can really shift your mindset and change the energy. I
can see myself when I walk in, I'll be like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J. I have to go back and say the whole alphabet every time. I love that. These are great ideas. What are nonlinear ways to be systematic? I love that.
Your brain, I think, works a little bit more in that space than mine. My brain is pretty linear. So I'm like, I don't know how to answer that.
We're a good team. Rebecca's like, I don't know. Why would you do that? I think for me, when I notice the tightness in my body, that's a moment for me to figure out a shift, like what's going on, how do I shift, what do I need? When I notice a negative attitude coming up regularly. So it's more like there's these little signs that things are not where I really want them. And so is there something I need to do differently, learn about, or shift in that moment? So that would be my unsystematic way to do it. So some days I do it, some days I forget about it completely, and that's fine. As long as I'm doing it a little bit more than I did 5 years ago or more often. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I love that. Well, I so appreciate you all for joining us today, and sharing so much about what you're going through and ideas and resources for each other. Let's end with just a quick little body scan. This is another final tool that's really helpful. I do a lot of leadership training with physicians and CEOs in healthcare, and they have a lot of stress. And they use this tool like to shift to a new meeting or when they're headed home, so they don't bring it all home to their kids. So let's do a quick body scan. And this is interesting because you're just tuning into your body from head to toe. You're not judging what you're seeing or, noticing. You're simply noticing. And in noticing, it just helps you sort of let some things be released and get more present. So let's just do that really quickly. You're welcome to stay if you're interested. So you just notice now where you are at the top of your head, noticing the sensations. Does it feel like you have a tight hat on? Does it feel heavy? Does it feel tingly? Does it feel wide open? Just be noticing the sensations on the top of your head. And then come down to your eyes. Do you notice they feel tired or watery or itchy or clear? What's happening with your eyes? And come down to your ears and your jaw. Does it feel tight or loose? Or does it feel clenched? Just notice the sensations. And come down to your throat. Maybe it feels jittery. Maybe it feels like someone's pushing on it. Maybe it feels like you got something stuck there. Maybe it feels wide open. Maybe it feels energetic. No judgment. You don't have to do anything about it. Just notice. Come down your shoulders, down your arms. Do your hands feel jumpy or energetic or quiet or heavy? And come to your heart space. What do you notice there? Does it feel excited, open, tight, nervous, jumpy? Go down to your stomach. What are you noticing there? Maybe you're really ready for a snack. Maybe you're excited. Maybe there's some jitteriness. Maybe there's some dread. Come down and feel your hips. Do they feel even? How are you standing or sitting? Do they feel strong? Do they feel wobbly? Come down to your knees. What do you notice? Are they stuck? Are they shaky? Are they jumpy? Come down to your feet. Feel your feet against the floor. Notice how that feels. How do your toes feel? Now come back to your whole body and just notice. Beautiful. One thing, a friend of mine who works a lot with trauma, she said, if you're having a hard time being present in the moment, feel your feet and move your feet around on the ground, because your body, when you're getting nervous and scared, your body is, if it can't feel its feet, it's going to go a lot more into fight and flight, because you feel like you can't run, right? Your body's like, I'm here, I'm stuck, and I can't run. And so if you feel your feet, move your feet around, kind of step on the edges and the sides, that can really help you come back to, okay, I got this. I can have this conversation on the phone with the donor. I can breathe, and that brings you back to the present. Well, thank you all. I hope you take some fun things, time off this summer, and enjoy being outdoors. And Rebecca, thanks for joining me. And thanks everyone for being with us today. We'll send a recording shortly this afternoon, and keep telling us what's going on with you all. We really want to know what you're struggling with and how we can be of support.